Chapter 1. The metallic taste of copper and bitter synthetic tea coats my tongue before my eyes even open. Cold sweat drenches my collar, sticking the silk sheets to my chest as my heart hammer lashes against my ribs. My throat burns. My vision splits into double lines, blurring the towering mahogany ceiling above me. I do not panic. Panic gets you killed in a profiling unit, and it gets you killed faster when you wake up in a body that is not your own. I force my trembling fingers to dig into the mattress, fighting the heavy fog weighing down my prefrontal cortex. 2 years of memory data downloads in a violent surge of electrical heat behind my eyes. I am Caelan Thorne. I am 22 years old, a unbonded male Omega, and I am sitting in the master bedroom of the Sterling estate. More importantly, the former homicide profiler inside my mind identifies the chemical neurotoxin currently paralyzing my optic nerves. Synthetic beta blockers. Low dose, administered continuously over 24 months to simulate early-onset psychiatric decay. The heavy brass doorknob turns with a slow, deliberate click. I instantly drop my head back, relaxing my facial muscles into a mask of hollow emptiness. I let my jaw slacken slightly. I allow my hands to lie limp on the silk duvet. Dorian Sterling steps across the threshold. He is dressed in an immaculate, dark charcoal-tailored suit, his golden alpha hair slicked back without a single strand out of place. He carries a silver tray holding a steaming porcelain cup. His scent hits the room first, a sickeningly sweet, artificially enhanced vanilla, designed to cover the sharp, chemical reek of the drops he just stirred into the liquid. He sets the tray on the bedside table and leans down, smoothing a stray lock of hair from my damp forehead. His thumb lingers over my cheekbone, applying just enough pressure to feel the pulse racing beneath my skin. "You look so tired this morning, my sweet Caelan," Dorian says, his voice dripping with soft, practiced sorrow. "The cold morning air is making your mind foggy again, isn't it? Drink your herbal tea. It will help clear the confusion before the lawyers arrive." I force my eyes to slowly focus on his face, letting a weak, disoriented tremor touch my bottom lip. Hi, viewers. Have you ever had to act completely silent and pretend to trust someone when you knew they were actively trying to sabotage your life? I reach out with a shaky hand, taking the porcelain cup by its delicate handle. I raise it to my lips, letting the warm steam hit my nostrils. I do not drink. I pretend to swallow, using the motion of my throat to fool his eyes, while secretly keeping the liquid resting at the front of my palate. When he turns his back to open the velvet drapes, I lean toward the decorative porcelain vase on the nightstand and spit the tea into the dark soil of the dried orchids. Dorian turns around, his smile widening with calculated satisfaction as he sees the empty cup in my hand. He pulls a thick leather folder from his inner jacket pocket and drops it onto my lap. "Just a few signature updates for your family estate management, Caelan," he says smoothly, unscrewing the cap of a gold fountain pen and pressing it into my fingers. "Since your memory has been slipping so badly these past few months, the court suggested I take full power of attorney over the northern property lines. Sign on the yellow line." I look down at the fine print hidden beneath the land transfer jargon. My profiler training dissects the legal trap in 4 seconds flat. Section 9, Clause 4. Irrevocable medical consent for permanent involuntary placement in a high-security psychiatric facility. He is not trying to manage my land. He is scheduling my total removal from society in 30 days. "Did you know, Dorian?" I say, my voice steady, smooth, and entirely free of the chemical tremors he expected, "that prolonged ingestion of illegal synthetic suppressants leaves microscopic crystalline structures inside human fingernails?" Dorian freezes. His polished smile disappears. The light in his blue eyes shifts from soft concern to absolute freezing stillness. "What did you just say to me?" Dorian asks, his tone dropping an octave as his alpha aura flares, trying to crush my breath. I slide my legs out of bed and stand up. My knees wobble for a fraction of a second, but I lock my posture straight. I stare directly into his eyes, stripping away every trace of the weak, broken Omega he spent 2 years creating. "I said the tea tastes like cheap poison, Dorian," I reply coldly. "And your math is wrong." I turn around, walking straight toward the heavy antique wardrobe near the corner of the room. I reach beneath the floorboards tucked behind my shoes, pulling out a small black leather notebook filled with 2 weeks of precise dates, liquid measurements, and recorded chemical dosages. Dorian lunges forward, his fingers clawing for my shoulder to drag me back. Before his palm can touch my shirt, a sharp, deafening snap echoes down the hallway. The heavy double doors of the master bedroom burst open without a warning knock. A tall, broad-shouldered man steps into the room, his imposing frame blocking the morning light from the hallway. He wears a dark, double-breasted judicial coat with silver buttons. Silver streaks frame his dark hair, and his eyes burn like polished flint. The sheer density of his alpha aura floods the bedroom, instantly neutralizing Dorian's cheap scent with the heavy, crushing smell of ozone and crushed pine needles. It is Vane Sterling, Chief Supreme Judge of the Regional Omega Council. Dorian's father. Father, Dorian stammers, taking a rapid step backward while trying to hide his trembling hands behind his back. You were not supposed to arrive until the evening banquet. Silence, Vane says. The single word vibrates through the floorboards, cutting through the air like a blade. Vane does not look at his son. He walks slowly across the rug, his heavy leather boots clicking against the hard oak flooring. He stops 3 inches away from me. He reaches out, his massive, calloused fingers gripping my chin, lifting my face toward the window light to inspect my pupils. You are poisoned, Vane murmurs, his voice a deep baritone that rattles my ribs. 3 weeks of data, Judge Sterling. I reply calmly, holding up the black ledger. Vane takes the notebook, flips through the pages with terrifying speed, and then looks down at the floorboards at my feet. He kicks the loose wood aside, revealing a heavy metal lockbox Dorian hid this morning. Vane reaches down, snaps the steel lock with his bare hands, and pulls out the contents inside. It is not just chemical vials. Tucked under the poison bottles is a signed, stamped death certificate, with my name printed across the top, dated for next week. Chapter 2. The stench of blood and broken glass fills the lower holding cell before the guards even unlock the heavy iron gate. I walk 3 paces behind Vane Sterling, keeping my spine straight and my chin lifted despite the heavy physical exhaustion dragging at my muscles. The basement corridors beneath the Supreme Judiciary building are cold, damp, and isolated from the rest of the city. Dorian sits on a metal bench inside the center cell, his expensive suit jacket torn at the shoulder, his golden hair sticking to his forehead with sweat. 2 high-ranking alpha guards stand at attention outside his cell bars, their arms crossed, refusing to look him in the eye. "Father!" Dorian shouts, slamming his hands against the iron bars as soon as Vane's shadow falls over the concrete floor. "This is a complete legal error!" You cannot lock up an heir to Sterling Biotech on the word of a confused, unbonded Omega who is suffering from hallucination. Vane stops in front of the cell. He slowly unbuttons his dark judicial coat, reaching into his inner pocket to pull out a clear glass vial containing a pale yellow fluid. He holds it up to the harsh fluorescent light hanging from the ceiling. Dr. Harrison Vance was arrested 40 minutes ago at the International Airport, Vane says, his voice devoid of any warmth or paternal affection. He had $3 million in unrecorded bearer bonds and 5 liters of concentrated beta-blocker fluid in his carry-on luggage. He gave up your encryption codes in less than 4 minutes of questioning. Dorian's face drains of all color. His hands slip down the iron bars until his knuckles scrape the concrete floor. You audited my private accounts, Dorian whispers, his voice cracking with sudden realization. You were watching me before Caelan even woke up today. I step forward, standing right beside Vane. I let my gaze drift over Dorian's collapsed frame, dissecting his posture, his shallow breathing, and the frantic movement of his eyes. A classic narcissist, I say softly, ensuring my voice carries clearly into the quiet cell. You didn't just want my family's northern land rights to expand your private research facilities. You needed the capital because your illegal black market trials were failing, and you were running out of time before the regional council inspected your financial logs. You used me as a chemical bank account. You shut your mouth, Caelan, Dorian screams, lunging at the bars with a sudden surge of desperate anger. You were nothing until I took you into this house. You are an unbonded, low-rank Omega without a pack or a family line. No court in this country will ever let you keep those land titles without an alpha sponsor. Vane steps directly between Dorian and me, his massive shoulder completely blocking his son's line of sight. The air in the corridor drops 5 degrees, as Vane releases a concentrated wave of heavy, crushing alpha pressure that forces Dorian down to his knees on the cold floor. He does not need a sponsor, Vane states coldly, because as of 6 o'clock this morning, the Supreme Judiciary has placed the entire Thorne estate under direct federal protective wardship. My wardship. Dorian gasps for air under the crushing weight of his father's scent. What? What are you saying? I am saying you are stripped of your rank, your inheritance, and your family name, Vane replies, turning his back on his son without a second glance. The trial begins in 3 days. Pray the jury shows you more mercy than you showed the boy you tried to destroy. Vane turns to me, offering his heavy, cloth-covered arm. Let us go, Caelan. The air down here is toxic. I place my fingers gently onto his forearm, feeling the intense heat and raw strength radiating through his heavy coat. As we walk back up the winding stone stairs toward the main hall, my legs suddenly buckle. The delayed reaction of the poison in my system strikes like a lightning bolt, making my heart flutter wildly as dark spots flood my vision. I stumble forward, expecting to hit the hard stone steps. Before my knees touch the floor, Vane's arm sweeps around my waist, lifting my entire weight effortlessly off the ground. He pulls me tight against his broad chest, his large hand coming up to support the back of my neck. His scent of ozone and pine surges around me, instantly steadying my fluttering pulse. Hold on to me, Vane commands softly into my ear, his deep voice vibrating straight into my bones. I have you. I wrap my arms around his shoulders, burying my face against the crook of his neck. For the first time since waking up in this strange world, the cold terror in my chest melts away, replaced by an overwhelming wave of safety. We emerge into the grand rotunda of the judiciary building. Sunlight streams through the high stained glass windows, illuminating hundreds of high society reporters, council members, and noble families gathered for the afternoon session. A collective gasp echoes through the crowd as they see the Supreme Judge carrying an unbonded Omega through the main doors. Cameras flash frantically, blinding my sensitive eyes. "Judge Sterling!" a reporter screams, pushing past the security line with a microphone. "Is it true your son has been stripped of his title? Who will take over the Sterling biotech assets?" Vane stops in the middle of the marble floor. He does not hide me. He holds me tighter, staring down the crowd with absolute, terrifying authority. "The Sterling assets are frozen," Vane announces, his voice echoing off the high stone arches like thunder. "And any individual who attempts to approach my ward without my explicit written consent will be charged with high treason against the Omega Council." He turns and carries me toward his private armored sedan parked at the bottom of the steps. The driver opens the rear door instantly. Vane slides onto the leather seat, keeping me cradled in his lap as the vehicle pulls away from the roaring crowd. My hand rests over his chest, feeling the steady, powerful rhythm of his heart beneath his coat. "Where are we going?" I whisper, my throat dry. "To my private estate on the northern coast," Vane says, his fingers gently brushing a loose strand of hair away from my pale cheek. "Far away from the city. Far away from anyone who thinks they can use you." He reaches into his pocket, pulls out a gold key on a black ribbon, and slips it into my palm. "This opens the vault containing Dorian's master files," Vane murmurs, his dark eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that makes my blood run hot. "You wanted justice, Caelan. Now you have the keys to his entire empire." I clutch the key tightly in my fist, a small, dangerous smile touching my lips. But as I look out the tinted window at the passing city buildings, I catch sight of a dark black SUV following our car 3 lanes back, and its headlights blink 3 times in a precise military code. Chapter 3. The black SUV stays 400 yards behind our vehicle as we climb the steep, winding coastal roads leading towards Storm Edge, Vane's private estate. Rain begins to hammer against the armored windshield, blurring the dense pine trees lining the cliffs. Vane notices the vehicle in the side mirror immediately. His hand on my waist tightens, his thumb pressing into the side of my hip with protective force. He reaches for the internal comms button on the leather armrest. "Marcus," Vane says calmly to his driver, "take the eastern bypass along the cliff edge. Prepare the perimeter security grid at the main gate." "Understood, Supreme Judge," the driver replies, swerving the heavy sedan onto a narrow, unpaved logging road that cuts through the dark forest. I sit up straighter, forcing my foggy brain to analyze the threat. I turn around, staring through the rear window at the dark outline of the trailing vehicle. "They aren't tailing us to gather information," I say, my voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through my veins. "Look at their speed. They aren't turning off their high beams. They are keeping us locked in a straight line because they know this logging road terminates at the old suspension bridge. It's an ambush setup." Vane looks at me, his dark eyebrows lifting slightly in quiet shock at my instant tactical breakdown. "Dorian's private security unit," Vane says, his tone dropping into a dangerous growl. "He paid them off using offshore accounts before his arrest. They know if we reach the estate, the judiciary security grid will lock them out permanently. Then we don't give them the chance to corner us," I say, reaching over to grab the leather briefcase Vane brought from the court. I pop the brass latches open, pulling out a stack of paper blueprints for the Sterling regional property lines. I roll out the map on Vane's lap, pointing my finger at a sharp curve 2 miles ahead. Here, I continue rapidly. The old drainage route runs under the road right before the cliff edge. If your driver hits the brakes hard at the apex of the turn and turns off the exterior lights, their heavy SUV will overshoot the mud line trying to ram us from behind. Vane stares at the map for 2 seconds, then looks at me. A slow, terrifyingly dark smirk spreads across his masculine face. "Marcus," Vane orders into the comms. "You heard my ward. Execute the turn on my mark." The sedan accelerates wildly, the heavy engine roaring as we hurtle toward the sharp cliffside turn. The trees vanish into a wall of gray rain. Behind us, the black SUV accelerates to match our speed, its steel guardrail rising in our rear window like a predator opening its jaws. "Now," Vane commands. Marcus slams the brakes and yanks the steering wheel hard to the left. The sedan skids across the slick gravel, spinning a clean 180 degrees, while every exterior light cuts out instantly. We slide into the shadow of the dense pine trees, coming to a dead stop in the black mud. The black SUV roars past us at 60 miles per hour. Its driver hits the brakes too late. The heavy vehicle slides sideways across the mud, smashing through the rotten wooden guardrail, and plunges off the edge of the 100-foot cliff into the black, churning ocean below. A muted explosion echoes up from the rocks seconds later, followed by absolute silence. Inside our car, the only sound is the heavy, synchronized breathing of Vane and me. I lean back against the leather seat, my chest heaving as the adrenaline burst fades, leaving my muscles weak and shaking. The chemical poison in my system reacts violently to the sudden heart rate spike. My vision blurs again, and a cold sweat breaks out across my forehead. Vane turns to me instantly. He shifts his massive frame across the seat, pulling me completely into his lap. He wraps his heavy judicial coat around my shoulders, trapping my shivering body against his immense body heat. "You are brilliant," Vane whispers against my temple, his deep voice thick with an emotion he can no longer hide. A profiler, and strategist, and my ward. I rest my forehead against his collarbone, smelling the intense, comforting scent of pine needles and rain radiating from his skin. I wrap my hand around his neck, my fingers tangling in the soft hair at the base of his skull. "I survived 2 years in a trap, Judge Sterling," I murmur softly, looking up into his dark, burning eyes. "I am not going to die on a muddy road for your disgraced son." Vane's eyes darken. His hand moves up to cup the side of my face, his thumb gently tracing the line of my lower lip. His alpha aura wraps around us like a fortress, insulating me from the cold rain hammering against the roof. "Call me Vane," he commands in a low, husky whisper that sends a shiver straight down my spine. "When we are alone, you will never call me Judge again." I open my mouth to reply, but the car suddenly jolts to a stop as we reach the massive iron gates of Storm Edge Manor. The gates slide open automatically, revealing a fortress-like stone mansion sitting high on the ocean cliffs, lit by bright halogen security floods. Marcus opens the car door, holding a black umbrella over us. Vane steps out into the storm, carrying me in his arms as if I weigh nothing at all. He carries me up the grand stone steps, through the heavy oak front doors, and directly into the warm, firelit grand hall. He sets me down on a plush velvet sofa in front of a roaring stone fireplace. A butler steps forward, holding a tray of warm blankets and hot broth, but Vane waves him away with a sharp flick of his wrist. "Leave us," Vane commands his staff. "Clear the main floor." The servants bow instantly and vanish down the long corridors, leaving the two of us completely alone in the echoing hall. Vane kneels on the Persian rug in front of my sofa. He takes my cold, damp shoes off with shocking gentleness, rubbing my bare feet with his warm, calloused hands to bring back the circulation. "Tomorrow morning, the regional council will convene to challenge my wardship over you," Vane says, looking up at me through his long, dark lashes. "Dorian's political allies will claim I am keeping you here against your will, to seize your land rights for myself. Let them try," I say, leaning forward and placing my hands on his broad shoulders. "I will stand in front of their council and tell them the truth." Vane reaches into his inner coat pocket and pulls out a folded sheet of heavy parchment sealed with red wax. He places it in my hands. "This is not a wardship paper, Caelan," Vane whispers, his eyes locking onto mine with lethal, undivided devotion. "This is a formal binding contract of Omega co-sovereignty. It grants you 50% control over my judicial vote, my family assets, and my private pack holdings. Sign it, and no council on this earth can ever touch you again. I stare at the wax seal in absolute shock. A document like this hasn't been issued in over a century. It doesn't make me his ward. It makes me his equal partner in every law of the land. Why would you give me this much power? I ask, my voice barely a breath. Because my son wanted a broken doll to lock in a cage, Vane says, reaching up to press his lips gently against the pulse point on my neck, sending a jolt of pure electricity through my blood. And I want a king to stand beside my throne. I pick up the gold pen resting on the tea table beside the couch. My hand does not shake. I press the tip to the parchment, signing my name in bold, flowing script across the bottom line. Vane takes the signed document, blows on the wet ink, and sets it on the table. Then, without taking his eyes off mine, he slides his heavy hands up my thighs, pulling my body off the sofa, until I am kneeling directly on the rug in front of him, our chests pressed together. You are mine now, Caelan, Vane growls, his voice echoing with primal alpha possessiveness. Under pack law, under judiciary law, and under every right I command. I lean in, closing the distance between us, until my lips are brushing against his ear. Then prove it to the court tomorrow, I whisper back. Before he can answer, the heavy grandfather clock in the corner of the hall chimed midnight, and a loud, emergency warning siren begins to wail from the estate's exterior perimeter fence. Chapter 4. The wailing perimeter siren cuts through the quiet hall like a mechanical scream. Red emergency lights flash along the high stone walls, casting long, bloody shadows across the Persian rug. Vane rises to his feet in one fluid motion, pulling me behind his massive frame as his hand slides beneath his armpit, drawing a black high-caliber handgun from his shoulder holster. Stay behind me, Vane commands, his voice dropping into a flat, terrifying tone of absolute combat readiness. Marcus bursts through the side doors, holding a tactical radio spitting static and panicked shouts from the gatehouse team. Supreme Judge! Marcus yells over the siren. It isn't a ground attack. The Regional Judiciary Enforcement Bureau just landed 2 heavy troop transport helicopters on the front lawn. They have a federal seizure warrant signed by the High Magistrate Council. Vane's jaw sets into iron. The High Magistrate Council, he growls under his breath. Dorian's uncle must have called in his political favors earlier than I anticipated. The heavy front double doors of the manor are slammed open with a metallic crash. 12 heavily armored enforcement officers flood into the grand hall, their tactical rifles raised, laser sights painting bright red dots across the stone walls and Vane's chest. At the center of the squad walks a short, portly alpha man wearing high-ranking judicial robes lined with gold embroidery. High Magistrate Marcus Sterling. Dorian's uncle. Vane Sterling. Magistrate Marcus announces, his thin voice amplified through a tactical megaphone. You are hereby suspended from your judicial duties effective immediately. You are charged with abuse of power, illegal detention of a high society Omega, and treasonous obstruction of justice. Vane does not raise his hands. He stands tall, his gun held loosely at his side, his crushing alpha aura expanding into the room so violently that 3 of the frontline officers visibly falter, their boots sliding back on the marble floor. You enter my private home with armed forces, Marcus? Vane asks softly, each word carrying the weight of a death sentence. You have 10 seconds to clear your men off my land before I execute you for armed insurrection against a chief supreme judge. I step out from behind Vane's back, walking straight into the open space between the laser sights and the enforcement team. Stand down, Caelan, Vane snarls quietly, reaching out to drag me back. I raise my hand, stopping Vane with a single calm gesture. I look Magistrate Marcus dead in the eye, my facial expressions turning into a portrait of absolute, razor-sharp authority. Magistrate Marcus Sterling, I say, my voice echoing clearly over the drone of the helicopters outside. On what legal basis do you claim I am being held against my will? The magistrate sneers, holding up a digital tablet displaying a court document. Under Section 42 of the Regional Omega Protection Act, an unbonded Omega who has been exposed to mind-altering chemical substances must be placed under the immediate, neutral custody of the State Judiciary Council until a full medical evaluation is completed. You are unfit to make legal decisions, Caelan Thorne. I laugh. It is a cold, clear sound that cuts through the tension in the room like broken glass. You are referencing the Act of 1988, Magistrate, I reply, stepping closer to the line of raised rifles without a single flinch. But you seem to have forgotten the constitutional amendment passed 3 years ago by the Federal Assembly, Clause 9 explicitly states that any Omega who holds a signed, witnessed contract of Omega co-sovereignty is permanently exempt from state judiciary custody, as they hold equal legal rank to a chief supreme judge. Magistrate Marcus's face turns bright red. That is impossible. You are an unbonded, low-rank Omega. No such contract exists for you. I point my finger toward the tea table near the fireplace, where the freshly signed parchment rests under the warm firelight. Check the table, magistrate, I say coldly. Signed, witnessed by Chief Judge Vane Sterling, and recorded under federal jurisdiction 5 minutes ago. If your men step 1 inch further into this hall, they are not enforcing a warrant. They are invading the private residence of 2 active Supreme Judges. That carries an automatic penalty of summary execution under pack martial law. The enforcement officers look at each other in sudden panic. The red laser sights on Vane's chest begin to bounce nervously as the soldiers realize the legal trap they just walked into. Is this true, Judge Sterling? The tactical squad commander asks, lowers his rifle barrel 2 inches. Is the co-sovereignty paper executed? It is, Vane says, stepping up beside me and placing his heavy, warm hand over my shoulder, his dominant scent of ozone locking into the air like a physical wall. And my co-judge has just given you your legal warning. Drop your weapons, or I clear this room myself. The tactical squad commander doesn't hesitate for another second. Lower your weapons, he barks into his radio headset. Abort mission! We are standing down. You fools! Magistrate Marcus screams, waving his arms frantically. I am your superior officer. Arrest them both. The squad commander ignores the magistrate completely, signaling his men to execute a tactical retreat toward the open doors. 2 officers grab Magistrate Marcus by his silk robes, dragging him backward out into the rain as he continues to scream threats into the night. The heavy front doors swing shut, and the wailing sirens outside are cut off as Marcus resets the perimeter security grid from his console. Silence fills the grand hall once again. I turn to look at Vane. The intense adrenaline keeping my body upright vanishes in an instant. My legs give out entirely, and I collapse toward the floor. Vane catches me before I touch the rug, scooping me up into his arms and pulling me tight against his chest. He carries me rapidly up the grand staircase toward his master suite, his heavy heart hammering wildly against his ribs. You absolute madman, Vane whispers into my hair, his deep voice shaking with raw, unadulterated emotion as he sets me down on his king-sized bed. You walked straight into the line of 12 tactical rifles. I knew you wouldn't let them shoot me, Vane, I murmur weakly, letting my eyes close as the warmth of his bed envelopes me. He pulls the heavy comforter over my shoulders, then slides into the bed beside me, pulling my weak body completely against his broad, muscular frame. He wraps his heavy arms around my waist, burying his face in the crook of my neck, letting his pure alpha scent wash over my senses to heal the chemical damage in my system. Rest now, Caelan, Vane whispers against my skin, his lips pressing a long, warm kiss against my scent gland. Tomorrow, we take Dorian's trial to the Supreme Court, and we finish this war together. I drift off to sleep wrapped in his impenetrable embrace, feeling safer than I have ever felt in 2 lifetimes. But 3 hours later, in the dead of night, my eyes snap open as a cold leather glove drops over my mouth, stopping my scream before it can leave my throat. Chapter 5. The cold leather glove clamps down hard over my lips, cutting off my oxygen. I do not thrash wildly. I do not waste energy flailing my limbs. I instantly open my eyes, analyzing the shadow looming over the bed in the dim moonlight, filtering through the high balcony windows. It is not a random assassin. It is Dr. Harrison Vance, Dorian's private chemist. He wears a dark rain poncho, his face pale and sunken, his eyes wide with frantic, manic terror. In his free hand, he holds a pre-filled glass syringe glowing faintly with a clear, synthetic liquid under the moonlight. Quiet! Dr. Vance snarls in a wet, desperate whisper right against my ear. You ruined everything, you little rat. I lost my license, my money, and my life because of your profiler notes. But if I take you back to the board as a corpse, Dorian's allies will pay off my escape route to the Southern Territories. I look past his shoulder. Vane is lying on the other side of the mattress, trapped in an unnaturally deep, heavy sleep. A small, empty glass bottle of concentrated alpha sedative rests on the nightstand near his head. Dr. Vance used the estate's ventilation line to drug the Supreme Judge before stepping into the room. I have 5 seconds before the chemist plunges the needle into my neck. I do not try to overpower him. A physical struggle against an alpha-medicated chemist is a losing battle. Instead, I use his own momentum. I bend my knees sharp, driving my heels hard into the wooden bed frame behind me, pushing my entire body weight straight back into his chest. We both tumble off the high mattress, crashing violently onto the hardwood floor. The glass syringe flies out of his fingers, shattering into 100 sharp shards against the stone fireplace hearth. The leather glove slips off my mouth as Dr. Vance gasps for air, his wind knocked out by the heavy impact. "Vane!" I scream at the top of my lungs, scrambling across the floor toward the fireplace. "Wake up!" Vane's heavy eyelashes flutter, the strong alpha sedative fighting against the raw primal instinct of his scent bond reacting to my scream. His fingers twitch on the bedsheets, his chest heaving as he struggles to break through the chemical fog binding his mind. Dr. Vance scrambles to his feet, pulling a sharp scalpel from his coat pocket with a crazed, high-pitched laugh. "He isn't waking up in time, Caelan," Dr. Vance screams, lunging at me with the scalpel aimed straight for my heart. I reach out with my right hand, grabbing a heavy iron fire poker resting beside the stone hearth. I swing it with every ounce of physical strength left in my body, striking the chemist hard across his kneecap. A sickening crack echoes through the bedroom. Dr. Vance shrieks in agony, dropping to his hands and knees as his shattered knee gives out beneath him. The scalpel clatters harmlessly across the rug. A roar of absolute, unadulterated primal fury erupts from the bed. The alpha sedative snaps like a dry twig under the sheer volume of Vane's rage. Vane launches himself off the mattress, his dark hair wild, his eyes glowing a lethal, terrifying amber under the dark shadows of the room. His crushing alpha aura surges out like a tidal wave, smashing the glass windows along the balcony with raw physical resonance. Vane crosses the room in half a second. He grabs Dr. Vance by the back of his neck, lifting the grown man 3 feet off the ground with a single arm, slamming him back first against the heavy stone fireplace mantel. "How dare you touch him?" Vane roars, his deep voice rattling the glass fixtures overhead. His massive fingers tighten around the chemist's throat, cutting off his air completely, as Dr. Vance's face turns dark purple, his legs kicking uselessly in the air. "Vane! Stop!" I yell, dragging myself up using the arm of a heavy leather armchair. "Don't kill him. We need his testimony for the Supreme Court in 6 hours. If you strangle him now, Dorian's lawyers will claim key witness tampering." Vane's amber eyes flick toward me. The wild, lethal fury in his gaze slowly softens as his profiler ward's voice reaches his mind. He maintains his crushing grip for 3 agonizing seconds before throwing Dr. Vance onto the floor like a pile of filthy rags. Marcus and 4 armed estate guards burst through the broken bedroom doors with their weapons drawn, having finally heard the shattering window glass. "Secure him," Vane orders, his voice cold enough to freeze water. "Lock him in the sub-basement vault under heavy restraints. If he so much as breathes wrong, break his other leg." "Yes, Supreme Judge," Marcus shouts, dragging the groaning chemist out of the room by his collar. Vane turns to me immediately. The lethal killer vanishes, replaced instantly by intense, desperate panic. He rushes across the floor, dropping to his knees in front of me, his large hands sweeping over my arms, my shoulders, and my neck, looking for any sign of blood or injury. "Did he cut you?" Vane asks, his hands trembling as he cups my cheeks, checking my skin under the moonlight. "Caelan, tell me, did he touch you with that blade?" "I am fine, Vane," I say softly, placing my hands over his shaking knuckles. "He didn't touch me. You woke up." Vane pulls me tight against his chest, burying his face in my hair, his body trembling with the delayed shock of almost losing me. He lifts me up in his arms, carrying me out of the ruined bedroom and down the grand hallway toward his secondary private quarters on the south wing. He sets me down on the fresh bed, sliding in right beside me, wrapping his arms and legs around my body like an unbreakable steel cage. He buries his face into my scent gland, inhaling my calming scent deeply to restore his sanity after the chemical attack. "I am never letting you out of my sight again," Vane whispers fiercely against my throat, his lips pressing tight against my pulse point. "Not in court. Not in this house. Not anywhere in this world." I smile, burying my face against his warm, broad chest, wrapping my arms tightly around his neck. The sun begins to rise over the ocean cliffs, casting brilliant golden rays of light through the high glass windows of our new room. The long night of terror is finally over. The morning of the Supreme Court trial has arrived. Vane shifts, resting his chin on top of my head, his dark eyes looking out at the rising sun with cold, absolute resolve. "Today, we destroy Dorian's entire faction in front of the world," Vane says quietly. I look up into his handsome, unyielding face, reaching up to gently trace the strong line of his jawline with my thumb. And today, Judge Sterling, I say with a confident grin, we show this entire country what happens when an alpha and an omega rule together as equals. As we dress in matching formal black judicial robes, a heavy knock echoes at the door, and Marcus enters holding an urgent telegram stamped with the seal of the Supreme Court President. "Read it," Vane commands, adjusting his dark silver cufflinks. Marcus opens the paper, his eyes widening in shock. "Supreme Judge, the High Council has just moved the trial location to the Central Imperial Arena, and they have granted Dorian Sterling the right to challenge your co-sovereignty contract through an ancient, fight-to-the-death trial by combat." Chapter 6. The heavy glass table shatters into a million sharp fragments as Vane's massive fist smashes down through the mahogany frame. Smoke from the hot exhaust of the military transports outside drifts through the broken windows, filling my lungs with the sharp reek of jet fuel. I do not flinch from the flying glass. I step over the splintered wood, grabbing the telegram from Marcus's shaking hand to read the black ink for myself. "Trial by combat in the Central Imperial Arena," I say, my voice ringing out like a cold steel blade against the stone walls. They think an ancient blood law overrides our co-sovereignty contract because they believe an Omega is a weak trophy who stands in the dirt behind his alpha champion. Vane turns to me, his dark eyes burning with absolute lethal rage, his heavy breathing shaking his broad chest beneath his dark judicial coat. He reaches out, grabbing my shoulders with fingers so tight they leave warm marks through my silk shirt. "I will tear Dorian apart with my bare hands on the sand of that arena before I allow him to take one step toward you," Vane growls, his voice dropping into a guttural alpha roar that shakes the heavy crystal chandeliers above us. "No, Vane," I reply, resting my hands against the thick lapels of his coat, looking directly into his blazing amber eyes with flat, unyielding focus. "That is the trap. The High Council wants you on that sand, so Dorian's private mercenary squad can use illegal neurotoxin darts hidden in the arena walls to paralyze your nervous system during the fight. They don't want a fair duel, they want a public execution." Vane freezes, his jaw locking hard as my profiler analysis sinks straight into his mind. "Then what do we do, Caelan?" Vane asks, his deep baritone vibrating through my chest. "We give them the duel they asked for," I say with a sharp, lethal grin. "But I am stepping onto that sand beside you, as your active military equal." An hour later, the roaring thunder of 50,000 high society spectators echoes through the massive open archways of the Central Imperial Arena. Moan. Sunlight beats down on the yellow sand below. The air is thick with the scent of dirt, sweat, and cheap bloodlust. The corrupt members of the High Council sit in the velvet-draped royal boxes high above the floor, drinking wine while watching us walk down the dark stone entrance ramp. Dorian stands on the opposite side of the arena floor, wearing polished combat armor. He holds a heavy steel broadsword, his face twisted into a smug, arrogant sneer, as 6 armed court-martials stand behind him. "Look at the pathetic old judge," Dorian shouts, his voice amplified across the stadium loudspeakers, bringing his little poisoned Omega pet to watch him die on live broadcast. The crowd roars with cruel laughter, their voices echoing off the concrete walls like a wave of noise. Vane draws his dark judicial longsword, the steel humming softly under the morning sun, as he steps forward to shield me with his body. I reach into the inner pocket of my black judicial robes, pulling out 2 small glass vials filled with clear liquid. I pop the rubber stoppers with my teeth and pour the contents directly over the edge of my silver dagger blade. "What is that?" Vane whispers without turning his head, keeping his eyes locked onto Dorian's broadsword. "The antitoxin to the neurogas they just released through the sand vents 3 seconds ago," I whisper back. "Hold your breath for 4 seconds. Before Dorian can lift his sword to strike, I sprint past Vane, sliding low across the dusty sand like a shadow. I dodge Dorian's heavy downward slash by 2 inches, the cold steel blade whistling past my cheek. I swing my arm up, driving my poisoned dagger deep into the soft leather gap beneath Dorian's chest armor. Dorian gasps, his sword dropping onto the sand with a heavy metallic clatter as his legs buckle beneath him. The neurotoxin in his system neutralizes instantly, but the paralytic compound on my blade locks his muscular frame into complete paralysis. He falls onto his knees, his eyes wide with frantic, unbelieving terror as he stares up at me. You cheated!" Dorian chokes out, blood trickling from the corner of his lips. "I didn't cheat, Dorian," I say coldly, stepping on his wrist to kick his broadsword 30 feet away across the dirt. I profiled your entire combat strategy before we left the house. You lose. Vane walks up slowly behind me, his heavy leather boots crushing the sand with rhythmic, terrifying weight. He lifts his massive sword, pointing the tip directly at the throat of the High Council President sitting in the velvet box high above us. The duel is over! Vane's voice thunders across the silent stadium. And under Section 9 of the Imperial Charter, a defeated challenger's entire corporate estate and political vote are forfeited instantly to the victor. The High Council President falls back into his seat, his face pale, unable to utter a single word of protest, as 40 armed federal officers loyal to Vane flood the arena floor, placing the corrupt council members under immediate arrest. Dorian lies on the sand at my feet, weeping silently in complete political and physical ruin. Vane sheathes his sword, turns to me, and pulls me into his heavy arms right in front of the 50,000 spectators and thousands of live broadcast cameras. He wraps his dark coat around my waist, lifting me off the ground, and presses his warm lips against mine in a deep, possessive kiss that seals our union in front of the entire nation. The stadium erupts into deafening applause as the people realize the old, corrupt regime has fallen in a single afternoon. Vane pulls back, looking into my eyes with intense devotion. You just conquered the entire capital in less than 10 minutes, Caelan. Vane whispers softly against my mouth. I smile, holding his face in my hands. We conquered it together, Vane. Chapter 7. The rain sweeps across the steep slate roofs of Storm Edge Manor, washing away the blood, dust, and dark memories of the capital city. Soft golden light streams through the tall arched windows of the Grand Master Library, casting warm reflections across the dark mahogany bookcases lining the walls. I sit on a velvet armchair in front of the stone fireplace, wearing a soft wool sweater that belongs to Vane. The heavy fabric falls over my shoulders, carrying his rich scent of ozone and crushed pine needles deep into my lungs. My fingers trace the smooth leather cover of a new journal resting on my lap. Not a ledger of poisons and dosages, but a record of our new judicial reforms. The heavy oak doors of the library open smoothly. Vane walks across the plush rug, carrying 2 silver mugs of hot spiced tea. He wears a comfortable dark linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms, free from the heavy weight of his formal judicial coats. He sets the mugs on the low tea table, drops to his knees on the rug between my legs, and rests his large, warm hands over my thighs. He leans forward, burying his face into the soft fabric over my chest, letting out a long, contented breath that vibrates straight into my ribs. You are quiet this afternoon, my king, Vane murmurs softly, his deep voice thick with absolute relaxation. I run my fingers through his silver-streaked dark hair, gently massaging the base of his skull where his tension used to live. I am just thinking about how fast a life can change, I say, looking down into his dark flint eyes. 4 weeks ago, I woke up in a dark room believing I was trapped in a chemical prison. Today, we signed the official decree abolishing the forced Omega conservatorship laws across 3 territories. Vane reaches up, grabbing my hand and pressing a slow, warm kiss against the center of my palm, his thumb gently caressing my wrist where my pulse beats strong and steady. Because you showed this entire nation that strength isn't about physical dominance or loud threats, Vane whispers, his eyes burning with undivided devotion. True strength is the clarity to see through a predator's lies, and the courage to build a new world on the truth. I smile, leaning down to press my forehead against his, feeling the steady heat of his body warming my skin. A quiet knock sounds at the library door. Marcus steps inside, carrying a small leather briefcase stamped with the official seal of the Federal Judiciary Bureau. Pardon the interruption, Supreme Judges, Marcus says with a respectful bow. The final audit of the Sterling Biotech liquidation has been completed. All assets have been transferred into the Thorne Educational Foundation as requested. And what about Dorian? I ask, my voice calm, completely free of any lingering hatred or fear. Marcus looks up from his papers, a cold, satisfied expression touching his lips. Dorian Sterling has been permanently transferred to the high-security labor facility on the southern salt flats, Marcus replies flatly. He spends 12 hours a day collecting natural mineral salts under the supervision of the beta guards he used to look down on. He will remain there for 30 years without the possibility of parole. Good, Vane says coldly, waving his hand to dismiss the assistant. Close the doors behind you, Marcus. We are finished for the day. Marcus bows again, steps backward out of the library, and pulls the heavy double doors shut, leaving us alone in the quiet warmth of the firelight. Vane shifts his weight, pulling me out of the armchair and down onto the soft velvet rug beside him. He lays me back against the oversized floor pillows, hovering over my body with his broad shoulders blocking out the rest of the world. He reaches out, his large, calloused thumb gently tracing the line of my jawline, lingering over my scent gland. "No more courts," Vane whispers in a low, husky growl that makes my core flutter with sudden heat. "No more corrupt counselors. No more poison. Just you and me." I reach up, wrapping my arms around his neck, pulling his head down until his lips brush against mine. "Just you and me, Vane," I whisper back. He closes the distance, pressing his lips against mine in a slow, deep, sensory-rich kiss that consumes my entire mind. His heavy hands slide down my sides, tracing every curve of my waist with absolute possessiveness, letting his dominant alpha scent envelope me in an impenetrable blanket of security. I pull him tighter against my chest, feeling his heart hammer against my ribs in perfect synchronization with my own. The cold chemical fog of my past is completely gone, replaced by the brilliant, burning light of a future we built with our own hands. As the sun sets over the ocean, casting long golden shafts of light through the library windows, a quiet rumble of thunder echoes in the distance, and a mysterious, unmarked envelope sealed with black wax slips under the bottom of the library door. Chapter 8. The dark envelope rests on the edge of the rug near the library doors, its black wax seal reflecting the red light of the dying fire. Vane rises from the floor instantly, his combat instincts taking over as he steps between the door and my body. He draws a small silver dagger from his boot, using the tip of the blade to flip the envelope open without touching the paper with his bare hands. A small silver memory drive slides out onto the rug, alongside a single folded sheet of thick parchment. I stand up, smoothing down my sweater, and walk over to stand by Vane's shoulder. I look down at the elegant, flowing handwriting on the paper. To the sovereign judges of Storm Edge, I read aloud, my profiler mind instantly analyzing the precise word choices and cold tone. "If you are reading this note, my nephew Dorian has already failed in his attempt to secure your land holdings. Do not celebrate your pathetic victory in the capital. Dorian was merely a foot soldier in a much larger syndicate. The true regional supply lines of the synthetic beta blockers do not belong to Sterling Biotech. They belong to the Northern High Pack, and we are coming to reclaim our property." Vane's jaw hardens into solid iron. His alpha aura surges outward, knocking a silver candlestick off the side table, rattling the glass panes in the bookcases. "The Northern High Pack," Vane snarls, his voice dropping into a guttural growl of pure fury. "The oldest, most corrupt aristocracy in the country. They have been funding illegal omega trafficking across the border for 2 decades, but we could never find their central distribution hub." I reach down, picking up the small silver memory drive by its edges. I walk over to the heavy mahogany desk in the corner of the room, plugging the drive into our encrypted judicial terminal. The screen flashes blue for 3 seconds before loading 3,000 pages of shipping manifests, offshore banking logs, and facial recognition files. My eyes sweep across the moving data streams with lightning speed. Vane steps up behind me, placing his massive hands on the back of my chair, leaning over my shoulder to read the glowing text on the monitor. "Look at the third manifest line, Vane," I say, pointing my finger at a specific shipping code dated 3 years ago. The Northern High Pack didn't just fund the synthetic suppressant research. They were using Dorian's clinic as a cover to test the neural control compounds on high society omegas, before deploying them nationwide to strip all omegas of their legal voting rights. Vane leans in close, his hot breath brushing against my ear, as his chest heaves with suppressed rage. "They wanted to turn an entire dynamic class into mindless, controllable property," Vane whispers in disgust. "And they thought I was just another fragile victim who would break under the chemical fog," I say, a cold, dangerous smile spreading across my face as I hit the terminal keyboard, executing a global override script. They didn't realize that when they transmigrated a homicide profiler into this body, they handed their worst nightmare the keys to their entire network. "What are you doing, Caelan?" Vane asks, watching my fingers fly across the glowing keys. "I am uploading this entire memory drive directly to the International Omega Rights Coalition server," I reply smoothly. "In 3 seconds, every federal agency in 6 neighboring countries will receive the exact GPS coordinates of the Northern High Pack's central distribution facility." The terminal chimes softly, displaying a bright green confirmation message across the screen. "Data transmission complete." Vane lets out a deep, booming laugh that echoes through the high rafters of the library. He reaches down, grabbing my waist, and spins my chair around to face him. He lifts me out of the seat, holding me high against his chest, his eyes shining with absolute pride and dark delight. "You destroyed a 20-year illegal syndicate in less than 2 minutes from my desk," Vane says, kissing my cheek, my neck, and then my lips with fiery intensity. "They picked the wrong Omega to poison," I say, wrapping my legs around his hips as he carries me across the room toward the large bay window overlooking the ocean. Outside, 3 heavy federal gunships cut through the dark storm clouds, their bright searchlights sweeping across the water as they head north to execute the international raid on the syndicate's stronghold. Vane sets me down on the wide velvet window seat, leaning over me as the rain lashes against the glass behind my head. He takes my right hand, sliding a thick gold ring set with a brilliant black diamond onto my ring finger. "What is this?" I ask softly, staring at the heavy ring catching the firelight. "The signet ring of the Chief Supreme Magistrate," Vane whispers, his dark eyes locking onto mine with absolute, eternal devotion. "Under pack law, it grants you full command over my private military units, my land, and my life. You are not just my equal partner in court, Caelan. You are the absolute ruler of my heart and my home." I look at the dark diamond shining on my finger, then look up into the face of the powerful alpha who risked his life, his title, and his family name to stand beside me. "I accept your mark, Vane Sterling," I say softly, pulling his face down to mine. We seal the bond under the flashing lights of the storm, knowing that our throne is secure, our enemies are destroyed, and our love is unbroken. Chapter 9. 6 months later, the golden afternoon sun bathes the Capitol Plaza in warm, radiant light. White marble pillars rise against the clear blue sky, decorated with long silk banners displaying the new crest of the Sovereign Judiciary Council, an open ledger wrapped in olive branches, symbolizing equal justice for all ranks. Thousands of citizens gather in the wide stone plaza, their cheerful voices echoing off the surrounding glass skyscrapers. Beta workers, free Omegas, and honorable Alphas stand side by side without guards or barricades separating them. I stand at the top of the grand marble steps of the Supreme Court building, wearing a tailored white coat trimmed with gold embroidery. The heavy gold signet ring on my right hand catches the sunlight, reflecting brilliant flashes across the crowd below. Vane stands beside me, wearing his deep blue chief magistrate robes. His broad shoulders are tall and proud, his arm wrapped firmly around my waist, pulling me close against his side so the entire nation can see our unbroken bond. "We present to the Assembly the Omega Equal Autonomy Act of 2026. Vane's deep, powerful voice echoes through the loudspeakers, carrying across the silent plaza like thunder. From this day forward, no Omega in this nation can be subjected to forced guardianship, chemical testing, or arrangement contracts without their explicit, written consent under federal law." The crowd erupts into a deafening cheer that shakes the very dust from the ancient marble pillars. Banners wave, flowers are thrown into the air, and tears of joy stream down the faces of young Omegas, who no longer have to fear being locked away in dark rooms. I step forward to the golden microphone, looking out over the sea of smiling faces. My profiler mind, once used to dissect horrific crime scenes and dark human cruelty, now sees the brilliant, inspiring future we have built from the ashes of our struggle. When someone tries to convince you that you are weak, I say, my voice steady, clear, and resonant across the broadcast lines. When they tell you that your mind is disoriented and that you need their control to survive, do not swallow their poison. Your greatest weapon against oppression is your unshakable clarity. Stand up, speak your truth, and tear down their cages brick by brick. The applause roars again, louder than before, echoing up into the bright blue sky. Vane turns to me, his dark eyes shining with intense warmth. He takes my hand, raising our joined fingers high into the air for the entire world to see. We walk back down the grand steps together, entering our private carriage as the federal guards escort us through the celebrating city toward our estate. Inside the quiet carriage, away from the roaring crowds, Vane pulls me onto his lap, burying his face in the crook of my neck, inhaling my sweet, calm scent with a deep sigh of utter contentment. "You gave them back their freedom today, my king," Vane whispers softly against my skin. "We gave them back their future, Vane," I reply, wrapping my arms tightly around his broad shoulders, pressing my lips gently against his ear. He looks up into my eyes, his calloused thumb gently tracing the line of my lip. "And what about our future, Caelan?" Vane asks, his tone dropping into a soft, romantic whisper. "Now that the wars are won, What does my profiler want to build next? I lean in, pressing my forehead against his, a quiet, blissful smile touching my lips. A home, I whisper back. A home filled with peace, love, and laughter, where no one ever has to hide who they are again. Vane smiles, a rare, beautiful expression that lights up his handsome face, and pulls me into a long, deep, sensory-rich kiss as our carriage rolls forward into the warm golden afternoon. Chapter 10. 2 years later, the peaceful sound of ocean waves crashing against the rocks below Storm Edge Manor fills the quiet morning air. A gentle sea breeze blows through the open French doors of the sunlit veranda, carrying the fresh, clean scent of salt water and blooming white jasmine flowers. I stand by the wooden railing, wearing a comfortable linen shirt, sipping a cup of warm chamomile tea. My mind is completely clear. The metallic taste of synthetic poison is a distant memory, replaced by the deep, unshakable peace of a life lived in complete freedom and truth. A soft pair of small hands tugs at the hem of my shirt. I look down, smiling warmly at the 2-year-old boy standing at my feet. He has my sharp, observant green eyes and a lock of dark hair with a tiny streak of silver framing his forehead. Leo Thorne Sterling, our son. "Up, Papa!" Leo giggles, holding his small arms up toward me. I set my teacup on the wooden table, bending down to scoop our little boy up into my arms. I tickle his ribs softly, making him let out a bright, ringing laugh that echoes through the quiet garden. A pair of massive, warm arms wrap around my waist from behind. Vane steps up against my back, resting his heavy chin on my shoulder, his large hands coming over mine to hold our son securely between us. His dominant scent of ozone and pine wraps around us both like an impenetrable shield of love and protection. "Good morning, my sweet boys," Vane whispers softly into my ear, pressing a gentle kiss against my neck. "Look, Papa," Leo says, pointing his tiny finger toward the private harbor at the bottom of the cliff. "Big boat!" We look down at the blue water below, watching a large legal vessel flying the flag of the Thorne Educational Foundation set sail to deliver free medical supplies and educational materials to remote Omega settlements across the coast. Our foundation is expanding to 3 more provinces this month, I say softly, leaning back against Vane's broad, sturdy chest. Every child in those territories will have access to free education and full legal protection. Because you refuse to let Dorian break your mind, Vane says, his fingers gently caressing Leo's dark hair before wrapping tightly around my waist. You transformed your deepest pain into a light that guides this entire nation. I turn my head, looking into the eyes of the man who became my protector, my equal, and my true bondmate. We built this light together, Vane, I say softly. In this life, I learned that cruelty often disguises itself as care, hiding behind soft words and systematic gaslighting. Predators rely on making you doubt your own sanity, so you surrender your power without a fight. But when you stand firm in your truth, when you document the facts and refuse to play their toxic games, you can dismantle even the most terrifying cages. True love does not trap you or dim your light. True love stands beside you, respects your mind, and gives you the strength to build your own kingdom. Vane pulls me closer, pressing his warm lips against mine in a long, sweet, possessive kiss that tastes of warm spiced tea and endless tomorrows. Leo giggles between us, clapping his little hands as the golden morning sunlight covers our small family in warm, radiant light. Our story is a testament to the fact that no matter how deep the fog seems, clarity, justice, and love will always prevail in the end. If Caelan's journey from poison to power inspired your heart today, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications so you never miss another uplifting storytelling narrative. Share your thoughts and personal reflections in the comments below. Your voice matters, and your story can inspire others who are fighting their own battles in the dark.